strategic moments. Strategic moments. Okay? And so here we go.
No one warned us. No one said you were going to lose both engines at a lower altitude than any jet in history.
Thank you. That thing is on the brake too. Maybe they'll hear that and they'll start moving this way. I don't know. Nothing else is working.
I've seen Sully, yes.
I see even Dan Broughton stuck out there.
Dan Broughton, we need you. Here we go again. Or not. What in the world?
No one warned us. No one said you were going to lose both engines at a lower altitude than any jet in history. This was dual engine loss at 2,800 feet, followed by immediate water landing with 155 souls on board. This is the captain. Brace for impact.
What? Brace! Heads down! Stay down!
There were 155 people on that plane. For one of them.
Over 40 years in the air, but in the end I'm going to be judged on 208 seconds. Need to count passengers and crew.
Is anyone still here?
How many of you saw Sully Sullenberger? Well, when I saw that movie, that clip right there just got under my skin. There were a couple things that he said in that clip that really got under my skin. The first one was, he said 40 years in aviation, and ultimately my entire career will be judged on 208 seconds. We'll talk about that for a minute, those 208 seconds, because when I saw this, I got to thinking, how important are those strategic moments? And if we're believers, what is our responsibility in strategic moments? And I went back to 1976, to the beach in Virginia, and I went through my conversation with the guy that met me at the beach. And I kind of repeated his questions and my answers. And you know how long it took for that encounter? About 208 seconds. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, Sully Sullenberger says he, was in aviation for over 40 years, and ultimately his whole career will be judged on how he managed 208 seconds. I'm not sure that the guy that witnessed to me would be judged on how he managed those 208 seconds. But I can assure you that my life will be judged on how he handled those 208 seconds. Because those 208 seconds changed my life forever. Changed the trajectory of my life, changed my future, changed my family, everything. 208 seconds made a significant difference. And here's the thing about that. Those 208 seconds, I think, are the key. Now, I had a lot of positive influence from the church. When I was a little boy, I went to the Newport News Church in Nazareth until I was about 5. They had an impact on me. I remember hearing about God, and I remember the little Sunday school teacher telling me that you need to ask Jesus in your heart. And if he gets in your heart, you'll be able to be like Jesus. I remember them praying for me. All those things, those fingerprints in my life that God did. You know what that's called? That's called prevenient grace. That's called grace going before we ever know it. And if we really believe in prevenient grace, we understand that when we encounter someone for those few seconds, those many 208-second opportunities that God provides for us, that it's God who provides those moments. Because throughout my life, I had a lady in my Sunday school class that taught my junior high boys Sunday school class. Her name was Mrs. Lloyd. She was like 70 years old. Back then, I was like 13. I thought she was ancient. My family was poor. We had 13 kids, and the two parents, same two parents, had this 13 kids. We lived in a house with 2 bedrooms and 1 bath, not a shower, just a bath. And there were 9 women and 6 boys. So my dad wouldn't change the water in the tub. So except once. He bathed all 13 kids, and I was number 7. So I got to get in the tub after 6 of my sisters were in there. And there was more cold water, more floaties than there was clean water in that thing when I got in that tub. I don't think I ever took stuff off of me in a bathroom until I went to college and had my first shower. Before that, I was always adding stuff, I think. But that was my life. Well, throughout my life, I remember that the little youth group that I went to when I was a teenager, 3 times, I went 3 times. 2 of those times, one of those times they showed a distant thunder. Another one of those times they showed a thief in the night.
Yeah.
You know what that's called? That's called prevenient grace. That's what that is. Then my brother died at age 19. We buried him at 19. He was killed in a car wreck. He was decapitated. It was a horrible accident. 6 people died in this car wreck. My brother-in-law died in the same accident. My brother-in-law and my brother. I went to their funerals. At my brother's funeral, the pastor preached his message on the rich man and Lazarus. And he read very carefully that passage that said, the rich man in hell looked up and he cried out to Abraham. And he said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me and send Lazarus the tip of his finger in water to touch my tongue because I'm in agony in these flames. And of course, God, our Father Abraham, said, that's not possible. There's a great chasm fixed between us and you that no one can go from there to here or here to there. He said, then please, Father Abraham, he said, send someone to my brother's house. Tell them, unless they end up in this horrible place. Preacher preached that the day my brother was buried. You know what that's called? That's called prevenient grace. God was speaking to my heart. I was lost. I was broken. My best friend, Tony Lyons, was shot in the head trying to buy some heroin one night. 16 years old. Went to his funeral. All those things, God was working my heart and my spirit up to that strategic moment when I was at Virginia Beach. And this young man had the opportunity to make a decision on how he would handle those 208 seconds. He witnessed to me. My guess is that young man probably went to a church the Sunday before and some crazy preacher told him to do what I'm telling you to do. And this idiot didn't know better. He just went out and did it. And because he did that, I imagine that he left not feeling really good about that experience. Because I cussed him out and yelled at him, called him all kinds of horrible names, told him he ruined my day, told him he killed my buzz, I wasted $60. That kid probably went back to his preacher and then the next Sunday he said, you know this whole evangelism thing you're talking about, that's stupid. Is that what I get? I go witness to somebody and I get yelled at and cussed out. Is that what we get when we evangelize? Because that's what we do. And we quit and say it doesn't work. You remember like the first time you tried to walk, when it didn't work, you decided not to walk? Remember that?
I don't.
But I can tell you that didn't happen. Or you wouldn't be walking. And so how we handle those 208 seconds, here's what I believe. I believe God is strategically designing those to happen every day of your life with someone. And the question is, are we hypersensitive to the Spirit to know when He puts those seconds together? Is it possible that our entire Christian lives could be judged on how we handle those 200-second opportunities that God gives us? And the question is, what will you do with the many 208-second opportunities God is providing through His prevenient grace? He's doing His part to win the world. It's not His will that any perish. He's doing His part. He sent His Spirit out. Every person in your community that doesn't know Jesus, when somebody dies, you know what they think about? God. When they get into a crisis and they don't have any money and they need a check, you know what they think about? God. You know why? Because the Bible's faithful and says God is always going to be there to help them with that. He's drawing them. The most important number in the Bible is 0. We don't like numbers. Most people don't like numbers because they don't have them. Here's the scripture, 2 Peter 3:9. The Lord is not slow in keeping His promises, as some count slowness. Instead, He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. Who's He patient with? Not the sinners. He's patient with the Christians. He's patient with you because He doesn't want any of them to perish. He's letting you have another day, another week, another year of life. Not so you could live, but so that you can do the will of God and to finish what He has called you to. That's why. In Matthew 18:14 says, in the same way your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should perish. None. 0. You know what the plan is to get to 0 so that nobody goes to hell? It's you. Lay people, pastor, DSGS, it's every believer. Your number one job, no matter what level you are in ministry, is to make disciples. And then I love this passage. John 6:44 says, no one comes to the Father unless the Spirit who sent him draws them. So if God wants everybody on the planet saved, right? We know that because he wants zero. Everybody, you agree with me? Just nod or rattle your brains. Let me just know you're still here, right? So we know God wants no one in hell, correct?
Right.
Say correct. Correct?
Right.
Right, okay. And so if that's true, and it says that no one comes to the Father unless the Spirit draws him, how many of the people who don't know Jesus is God's Spirit in this instant drawing? Every one of them that don't know him. Otherwise, his will would not ever be accomplished. He's doing his work right now. He's in the lives of the people in your community, preparing them for those 208 seconds that you're going to have, and that I'm going to have. So what's my part? Romans 10:14. How then can they call on the one they have not believed in? How can they believe on the one who have not heard? How can they hear unless someone tells them? I already shared this concept with you from 1 Corinthians 3:16. Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple, God's Spirit dwells in you? You are Jesus to this world. When Jesus died on the cross, the veil of the temple was destroyed, symbolizing that God's Spirit is now in you. That wherever you go, you're the church. You temple wherever you go. You become the temple wherever you're at. The Spirit temples in you. It dwells in you. Every believer must be involved with winning the lost to help depopulate hell. How? Here's one, 2 for 1. Think about this. What if every believer spent 2 hours every week of their lives doing what I've mentioned to you today? What if each one of you decided, I'm going to spend 1 hour every week of my life? I can commit 1 hour a week. And if I don't do anything but go out and pray for where sinners are at, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go and pray. I'll sit in my car, lock my doors, have my cell phone on to call 911 if I'm a lone lady. But I'm going to do this. And I have this one. Add a macro vision. What if every local church decided to multiply every 5 years? What if every church said, this is not optional? Our church is going to create another church every year, every 2 years, every 3 years. We're going to do it. We're going to put it in our map. This is our mission. We're going to plant a church every year, and every church we plant, or every 2 years, or every 3 years, every church we plant is going to plant a church every 3 years. What if you decided your church is going to have a church planting movement? Every church could do it. You know why I know that? Because the church in Jerusalem did it. Hey guys, if you don't believe in church planting, then you need to get on a plane on Friday and fly to Jerusalem, because that'd be the only church on the planet. They planted. That's why we have an Antioch church. How about 2 for 1? Every district plant 2 churches for every one you close. What if district said, we will not close a church until we've planted 2 before we close it? And if you get to where a church needs to close, then we're not going to close until we plant 2 churches, so we better get busy planting 2 churches. Because we're not going to close one until we plant 2. Well, that'd be kind of a cool thing. I want to tell you a story. I know some of you are sitting here thinking, oh yeah, that's you, Bane. You got the personality, you got a loud mouth, blah, 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 right? I know some of you are thinking that. You're thinking, yeah, you are. You're thinking, yeah, your personality. It's not your personality that makes you effective for the gospel. It's all the work God did those 17 years before I walked into that Boardwalk hamburger joint in Virginia Beach. And that guy did a terrible job of witnessing. Terrible. Horrible. He basically told me I was going to hell. That's not, he didn't take Evangelism 101. He had not studied this. But the good news is, God had done his job and prepared my heart, that all I needed to hear was that I might not be one of the few that makes it to heaven. And through God's prevenient grace through all those years, all this, think of all the years of investment God made in my life to get me ready for that one moment. That had that guy not opened his mouth, he would have wasted the stewardship of the Spirit in my life of prevenient grace for 17 years. That it was like worth nothing. Because he didn't capitalize on it. So you're thinking personality. That's what you're thinking. You're thinking giftedness. I know you are. Let me just tell you a story. Her name is Sherry. She's my wife. She's the most timid, bashful, shy individual I've ever met in my life. She has a degree in music performance, and she hates performing. That was kind of her mother's dream, that's why she did that. She won't sing in front of people. She plays the piano. She was #1 chair in the Miami Philharmonic in clarinet when she was 16 years old. She's a brilliant musician. She hates being in front of people. Vocal performance. She never sings in public. I love to hear her sing in the shower. But she will never do it in public. She is the most timid, bashful person. So I've been kind of teaching this to my wife for I've been married 36 years this June 6th. And I've been pounding on her. It doesn't matter about your personality, Sherry. It's God's, just let the Spirit flow through you. You're going to have to be willing to take risks. And she just, nah. You know. She came to this training, EMT training, about 2 months ago. And after the training, I went on a travel. My wife usually travels with me everywhere, except when she's with the grandbaby. But when I had a grandbaby, I learned that I'm number 3. It's God, the grandbaby, and then me. I'm number 3. If you don't want to be number 3, don't have grandbabies. You will automatically, that just naturally happens. So I was with, so she's not with me now, but she normally travels with me. And so I finished doing this training. She'd gone with me. I think it was in Michigan that we did this training. And she comes back, and I'm in Nashville doing another training, and I get a call from her one night, 9:30. This was in the wintertime. 9:30, it was a cold night in Kansas City. Probably the low got down to about 16 degrees. It was windy, spitting snow. And she calls me. I'm in Nashville, so I'm 700 miles away from her. And she tells me this. She says, I'm at Jermica's house. Now, Jermica lived at 52nd and Olive, which is 10 blocks north of the seminary, which is a really bad neighborhood. I said, what are you doing on 52nd and Olive at 9:30 at night? Who's with you? She said, no one. I said, what are you thinking? She said, I'm not thinking, I'm obeying. She wasn't obeying me because I've been telling her that for years. What'd you do? I went and visited Jermica because I'm discipling Jermica. I'll tell you a story of Jermica later on. Jermica was the fastest runner in the state of Kansas in her junior, freshman, and sophomore years in high school. She's an African-American woman. She's Jesse Owens' great-granddaughter. Jesse Owens won the Olympic gold in Germany the year that Hitler thought only white people could do that. God messed up his whole deal. Well, that was her great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather. She was raised by her grandmother, and she was the fastest runner. She was an Olympic hopeful. She was planning on going to the Olympics, the next Olympics. And her grandmother had a stroke, and she lost her mind, and she pulled her out of running, which made her lose her whole life. That was her life. She ended up in a drug-induced, alcohol-induced, adultery living life for the next 15 years. One night, I left the seminary. It's 8:15. I've been out. I was so tired. And I was coming down the street. I'm from Woodland, where the seminary is, and I came to this street light. And I did what I did the day that I was at Gregory in Paseo. I said, Lord, I'm so tired. Can I just go home? And he said this to me. He said, okay, we'll just let the people you would witness to go to hell. You go ahead and go home. And he really meant that. So I didn't turn right. I turned left. I went to the urban core, and I went down, and I met this guy in the parking lot. His name was Robert. His car was broke down. He was sitting out in the parking lot. And got in my car, and I had to give this hour, right? Because I have a promise I'm keeping. This is called organizational seriousness. I'm actually going to do something different. Instead of going home, I have to do this hour. And I get out of my car, and Robert's working on his old, a 1986 Corvette. It's all banged up and beat up. It's all nasty. He's got the valve covers off of it. He's got his tools out, got the parts all over the ground, out in the middle of this Metro Thriftway next to a plasma center where people go and give their blood for $25. And there's a strip mall, different things there. Got a Chinese restaurant in it. And I got out of my car because I had to give an hour to talk to people I'd never met before. It's late at night. And I met Robert. I went in and witnessed to a couple people inside the place, gave him a couple flyers about our church, and came back out. And I'm leaving, and Robert was still under his car. I said, can I help you with anything? This guy's like about a 6'4" African-American man in the inner city at 10 o'clock at night. And he said, it's kind of cold. I said, I've got a jacket. I had a very nice jacket. It's like a 100% silk jacket, like $180. It's a golf jacket. 100% silk, beautiful name brand. It was my favorite jacket because it's cut. It's got that sport cut, makes fat people look healthy. And so I had that, and I gave it to him. And when I gave it to him, he looked at me and he said, "Where am I at?" So I thought, like, dude's schizophrenic. He's like, gonna kill me or something. Where am I at? Like, that's not the thing. And he has a little tear come to his eye. He says, "People don't give people stuff here." He said, "They take stuff from people." I said, "Well, TLC's trying to change that." Our church's name is Total Life Church, TLC. And when I said that and gave him that jacket, his girlfriend was sitting in the car, shivering. She was wrapped up with some blankets or something in there because they've been there for a couple hours at that point. She gets out of the car and she comes and gets in line. There were 3 people. They had formed a line out to talk to me. They heard me pray for this kid in this supermarket that was messed up. His name is Jaheen, black kid that had some kind of skin disease, kind of like leprosy. He was sitting in the carriage. His mother was pushing him. He's 9 years old. And the first encounter that night when I went back in there was to pray for him because he looked like, I thought it was odd that a 9-year-old kid was sitting in a carriage. And his mother said he's got a skin disease, it's like leprosy. He can't walk because when he walks, his skin explodes and blood pours out. So he can't even wear shoes because his shoes get all bloody. And I said, "Can I pray for your son?" She said, "Sure." This was my first encounter that night. And I prayed for him, and when I finished praying, she just fell on my neck. Like they say in the Old Testament, somebody fell on her neck. She just fell on my neck, starts hugging me, she's crying. My son is 9 years old, and he's been sick his whole life, and you're the first person that's ever prayed for us in America. You know why? Because all the people that pray are out here where the white people live. Somebody say amen and ouch. It's true, guys. We're leaving the cities. We don't want to get around those people. They're dangerous. They're not dangerous to the believers. The devil ought to be afraid of us. We're not afraid of him and his stuff. They should be afraid of us. And this lady that checked us out heard me pray for this kid. She came out. She got in line. She wanted to talk to me about Jesus. She asked me if she'd come to my church. I had 3 people in line waiting to talk to me at 10:30 at night in the urban core asking me, "Hey, Rabbi, what about this question?" I'm not a rabbi. "Okay, Father." I'm not a father. You know, they have all these other, and I'm witnessing to them. And Jermika is the girl that gets out of the car. She walks around. She said, "Did you just give my husband a jacket?" I said, "Yes." She said, "I want to come to your church." And she came every night. She comes to church every night. She got saved. She was sanctified. She's gloriously serving Jesus now. It's an amazing story. That's because I made it. See, what we're talking about here, guys, is those moments when you make a decision. Am I going to go home because I'm tired? Or am I going to have organizational seriousness about mission? Am I actually going to change my behaviors? I want you to know that was not easy. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to go there that day. When the Lord told me, because you know what? Alana and Jermika, I'm convinced that what God said to me was true. If I had not stopped, they would go to hell. They're not going to hell now because somebody stopped. And so I'm challenging you to be the person who puts organizational seriousness in your life and you stop. Well, my wife always thought it was my personality, so she called me in there. That's Jermika. That's where she was at. She was at 53rd and Olive when she calls me. I'm in Nashville almost 10 o'clock at night, and she scares me to death. She said, "I'm getting ready to go to LaRonda's house." Well, LaRonda lives 65th in Paseo, a bad neighborhood that the guy next door to her threatened to shoot me a couple of weeks before this. His name is Bucket. I mean, you don't go there. She said, I'm going. I said, "Sherry, don't go there. Let me call one of the staff to go with you." I said, "What are you thinking?" She said, "I'm not thinking, I'm obeying." She goes to LaRonda's house. Scared me to death, man. I can't even help her. I'm in Nashville. And then she sends me this text. And here it is. "My first," she says. This is Jessie. I met her at McDonald's near the seminary, on the Truce. It's the one on Truce. They're about 3 blocks from the seminary. And that's her picture. She took a picture of her. She said her prayer request is for finances. We get a lot of that in the inner city kids. And I told her about the church. She thought it was sweet. Doing it. That's my wife, my timid wife, doing it. I mean, see, it's not your personality. It's when are we going to be obedient to the Spirit and be hypersensitive to the Spirit. I believe Jessie's going to come to church. Cheryl will be back in town. She'll go over to visit her. How to properly focus on the mission. Here's how. Number 1, define a mature believer. What's a mature believer? Here's what we think a mature believer is. Someone who goes to church. They don't drink, they don't smoke, they don't chew, they don't run with people that do. They pay their tithe and they're nice people. and they don't have affairs. That's what we think a Christian is. What we've left out is the one thing Jesus said is the qualifier for a disciple. Here's how you show yourselves to be my disciples, that you produce much fruit that lasts. See, what we've done is we've confused fruitfulness with faithfulness. See, we think that you're faithful even if you're not fruitful. Paul Borden, in his book, Hitting the Bullseye, says, if you're not fruitful, you're not faithful. Fruitfulness is incorporated in the definition of faithfulness in the kingdom. So I don't care how much you go to church and how many tithes you pay. If you're not making disciples, you're not faithful. I don't care how long your body sits in that church. That doesn't make you faithful. You can't define faithfulness without the word fruitfulness. I'll give you an illustration. I have a 2002 Toyota Tacoma pickup that I love. I've had it, I bought it from the original owner, a guy that treated it like his little baby. And he took care of it. And I moved to Missouri. My wife grew up in South Florida, Homestead, 50 miles south of Miami. She never saw snow. She comes with me to Missouri, and we live 15 miles out of town, and I'm doing a training in my office that day, all day. We have 13 inches of snow. That's the day she decides to drive in the snow. Except she doesn't take her car. No. She takes my truck. She drives all the way to town, 15 miles, comes all the way back. 2 blocks from the house, she hits a skid of ice, and she runs into a tree and smashes my poor little baby. She didn't get hurt. She's my baby too. She busted her knee, and she walked home and called me. So I came home and I towed my little truck, put it in my garage, and in the next couple of weeks I bought all the parts for it. I bought a fender, had it laying on this wall, the other fender over here. I bought the radiator support over here that holds the radiator and all the stuff on the front of the horn. Then I bought there was a piece of the frame underneath the fender that was like this. So I bought a new piece of frame. It was there. I had the condenser over here, the radiator over there, the water pump down over here, the front shell of the fender, the new bumper. It was all. And I had to walk through my garage every time I went to work because my garage was downstairs and my car was outside the garage. So you have to walk through the garage. For 2 years, every time I walked through that garage, every time I walked through it, I knew that truck was going to be there. It was faithful. It was there. The truck was there, the fender was over there, the radiator, water pump, the frame, the bumper. But that truck wasn't made to sit in the garage. Someone once said that, battleships are really safe in harbor. But they weren't built to be in harbor. Christians are really safe at church, but you weren't built for church. I love a sign I saw in a church in Billings, Montana last week. It said, "The church is leaving the building." This isn't the church, guys. This building, this isn't. You're the church. You're the church. So we need to redefine what a mature believer. A mature believer is someone who reproduces, who's someone who makes disciples. That's a mature believer. It's not just somebody who goes to church and pays their tithes. It's somebody that makes disciples. We need to define the church culture. The church culture is, hey, we need a nice church. And when somebody starts talking about church planting, we go, wait a minute, we don't need anybody to give up. If we listen to God, He would help us redefine that. And we need to focus on what matters to God. Why did Jesus come? Let's read this together, Luke 10:19. You see it up there? Let's read it together. For the Son of Man came to give us a nice church. He came to seek and to save the lost. And He has made us ambassadors of Christ, as if God Himself were making His appeal through us. That's why I know it isn't about your gifting. As if God Himself were making His appeal through you. He can make His appeal through anybody. He can make His appeal through a dumb donkey. The vessel is not relevant. The giftedness of the vessel. That donkey didn't speak English, but it did that day. Well, it wasn't English. It's probably Aramaic, whatever. But that donkey spoke a language. And it wasn't natural for that donkey to speak a language. You know what donkey language is. It's not, hey, Gideon, you're an idiot. Why are you beating on me? But the donkey spoke. Why? Because it's the Spirit that makes us do what God wants us to do. It's not our gifts. So, here's a kind of an interactive little do. We're not going to take the time to do it. Now, I do want you to look back at your list. And I want you to I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to take time to confess to others your possible sin of omission and neglecting the lost. I want you to take 5 minutes. I want you to look at somebody in this room and express to them your confession of how you've fallen short in reaching the lost. Do that right now. Just give it somebody. Go ahead and just share. Be honest. This is where I've fallen short in discipleship and evangelism. Would you do that? If you don't have anybody, you can do it with 3 people. I don't care, but talk to somebody.
I haven't taken enough time.
I've had enough.
I've had enough. I just haven't taken enough.
I think